Okay, let's get into some UV mapping. I'll give you the really basic introduction to UV mapping. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a plane, and I'm going to jump over to the front view just to keep this simple here. And I'm going to make a plane, polygon plane, out here. Something like that. Very exciting. And frame that up. Alright, so I'll put this so you can see that a little better. So I'm in the front view. And I'll jump to the front view right now, make that full screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to assign a material, as we were doing, to this object, this plane. But I'm just going to assign a basic Lambert here, like we've been doing. And I get this dialog box here. And now I'm going to, instead of going over here and clicking to make a color, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on this checker box over here to call up a file to go into the color channel. And so we're going to go into materials much more detail later on, but suffice it to say for right now that the color channel will take either this flat, color that we're generating off the computer, or it will take a file or another type of input over here. We want another type of input. We want to use a bitmap. So we're going to click on this, and we get our create render node, and it gives us all kinds of choices. So we can make a checker. These are what they call procedural textures that are generated by the computer, kind of like a primitive, like a geometric primitive. These are like two-dimensional versions of that. But file is going to refer to a specific file that we've made. So I'll click on File, and it turns blank here. And now it brings up another node, the File node, and this Place 2D Texture node here. So I'm going to go to the File 1 node, and right here where it says Image Name, it's blank right now, and it's looking for a file, so I'm going to tell it where to find the file. So I click on that little folder there, and I'm going to pull this one up. I'm going to call it Sweet. Okay, I'll pull that up. And it maps it onto this new plane that I made. It doesn't look too bad, actually. So if I jump out here to the perspective node, it's a flat plane. We notice that it's double-sided, kind of mirror image on the back there. And it looks pretty good, but it's not smack dab in the middle. If you look over here, it shows you the little thumbnail of what the file looks like. Let's say I want this face to line up in the center. Well, here I'd have to go into what's called UV editing. And so I'm going to click on the UV editor, and we get this window here. I'm going to select this object here, and then sure enough, it shows, as I select this, if I click off this object, this disappears. I click on the object, it brings up the active material that I've created, the bitmap here. And we've got this white box around it, and this white box is the same size and proportion as my polygon plane out here. And you can see how the white box intersects where this polygon cuts off that image. So what I'm going to have to do is if I drag this white box over and center it, then this will center my texture out here. Well, how do I do that? Well, I can either do this out here or over here, but I'm going to right-click and hold to get my marking menu and go over to UV. And I'll explain what UVs are later on in class. But right now, so it brings up these boxes here, these little brown points. They look kind of like vertices, but they're called UVs, and they're brown to distinguish them from the magenta vertices. I'm just going to select them all here, and now they turn green. And you'll notice as I selected them over here, these 4 points on my UV map over here turn green as well. And now, if I hit W, it's already there, which is just the same move tool that I would use out here. I've got a move manipulator with the arrows, except it doesn't have the 3rd dimension because UV space is always referring to a flat 2-dimensional space. And in UV space, U is the X is equivalent to the X of 3D space, and V is equivalent to the Y of 3D space, going up this way. So U is horizontal, V is vertical. And they use that as a separate nomenclature from XYZ to XYZ. Anytime you hear that, you're referring to 3D space out here, and UV refers to this flat space of an image. So now that I've got these 4 points selected, all I have to do is drag using that red arrow over here, and I've got my face centered nicely there in the middle of the plane. And before we quit this lesson, go ahead and experiment with what happens if you move this up and down. Interesting. So sure enough, this edge corresponds to this edge up here as far as what we get. So if I move it right down here, we come to the top of his head. But you'll also notice that as I do this and I move it down far enough, we get a repeat of the texture down here. And so what I want to point out is that what we're looking at in our UV texture editor, you'll see it's always this, whoa, oops, thinking about a wrong program there. We've got this quadrant here, and this is always going to be our same thing. This is positive XY, this is positive Y, negative X, this is negative X, negative Y, and this is positive X, negative Y, except we're talking about UV, so where I said X and Y, just substitute U and V. My apologies. So what happens is that this basically tiles. Anytime we leave this square with our UV map, we're going to get a tile. So this image is going to repeat anywhere outside. So if I move it this way, it'll repeat this way. But go ahead and let's move it back up, line it back up. So as opposed to just, you can also, instead of just moving things, you can also choose to rotate these UVs. And we get a corresponding rotation out there. And you can scale the UVs. So, and these are the same keyboard shortcuts, QWERTY shortcuts. So as we scale, you can see as the face takes up more of that rectangle, he takes up more of the rectangle out here. And then we can also move that around. And we can scale it back up. And you can see as we scale this, we're going to get a lot of tiling. Because our UV map is now way bigger than the texture, so it has to repeat that texture to get that kind of a scaling to make sense. So that's a real quick introduction to UVs, and in the next video we'll show you how to move, what happens when you move UVs individually.